but not necessarily the only ones to the mysteries we will examine.
In August 1945, a motion picture camera crew enters the city of Hiroshima, Japan, to record startling images of the first city devastated by an atomic bomb. There were those who said that Hiroshima would remain uninhabitable, forever poisoned by radiation, and that those who were exposed to the bomb would all be dead within 3 years. What has become of the Hiroshima survivors? On July 16, 1945, a signal flare illuminates the barren New Mexico desert as scientists anxiously await the detonation of the world's first atomic weapon. For President Truman, the inevitable dilemma: should the weapon be used against Japan? Believing that it will bring a speedy end to World War II and the savings of millions of lives, the president issues the order: drop the bomb. In the early morning of August 6th, a B-29 named the Enola Gay departs the Pacific island of Tinian en route to Japan. Her payload, a single 5-ton bomb nicknamed Little Boy. The mood in Hiroshima that morning was one of uneasy anticipation. While other Japanese cities were being leveled by American bombers, Hiroshima remained unchanged, and no one in Japan could understand why.
Some thought Hiroshima was being spared because it was too beautiful to bomb. They thought the Americans were saving it to build villas there. Others speculated that a relative of President Truman's, perhaps even his mother, was living in the city, and that's why the city was being spared. Yet there were those who foresaw the real reason. Hiroshima was being reserved for a special, highly destructive weapon.
Many survivors remember seeing the B-29 over Hiroshima that morning, but paid it little heed. And few could see a small, shiny object falling from the plane. Kaz Suishi was an American of Japanese descent living in Hiroshima at the time of the bomb. She was 2 miles from the bomb's hypocenter.
It was a beautiful blue sky that morning. I heard the sound of the plane and I looked up and saw the B-29. I was not concerned because the B-29 used to come every single day, but it never dropped bombs. I thought it was beautiful. It looked like a silver angel. Then after the B-29 was gone, there was still a little dot, a tiny little dot falling to the ground. At first I thought it was a parachute, and I thought how brave the American must be to parachute into the city.
During the 43 seconds it took for the bomb to fall to Earth, most of the inhabitants of Hiroshima weren't even aware they were in any danger, and none could imagine the devastation that was to follow. In an instant, the city of Hiroshima, Japan, was obliterated. Metal fused with stone, sand turned to glass. It was as if the sun had come in contact with the earth. Every structure within a 2-mile radius of the bomb's hypocenter was destroyed. Another Hiroshima survivor is Florence Yamada Garnett. She was 13 years old at the time and lost most of her family in the explosion. It is only recently that she has been able to talk about her experiences.
Next thing you knew, the building was falling on top of you. There was a pressure like somebody was just stepping all over you. It was, and then the heat. After the explosion of the bomb, you can feel the heat. You suck in the air, and you think you're dying. I was rolled across the schoolyard. That's about all I remember at the time.
The temperature near the center of the blast was so great, human beings literally evaporated, leaving behind, in some cases, nothing but their shadows etched into stone and concrete. No one is certain how many were killed in the blast. Conservative estimates put the figure at 70,000, with many thousands more to die in the weeks and months to follow. Within days, medical personnel attempt to treat the tens of thousands of seriously injured. Severe burns and mutilations are so numerous, medical facilities so primitive, that most of the severely injured have little chance at all for survival. As one doctor puts it, Hiroshima is a sea of dead and dying.
You could see people running out of the city, skin hanging, some burned to look like charred, but they were still moving. I remember seeing people just sitting or standing, charred to death. I recall a man that was on a bicycle that was still leaning against the bridge, and another person taking the body off of the bike and then riding the bike away. I thought it was cruel at the time, but of course, it's survival for yourself.
As horrible as their experiences have been, many of the survivors are soon to learn more terror is to confront them. Within days and weeks, the survivors begin to notice in themselves a strange, insidious form of illness. The survivors attribute the symptoms to A-bomb disease. They are actually the effects of acute atomic radiation never experienced before. One man who understands the terror of radiation poisoning is Dr. Robert J. Lifton, a psychiatrist who has spent several years in Hiroshima and has interviewed numerous atomic bomb survivors.
Well, with most wars and with the use of conventional weapons, you kill people. Then both sides bury their dead. They then return to life as usual. Oh, they grieve and there's pain, but life goes on in the old-fashioned way. In Hiroshima, the bomb was dropped, and that was the beginning of lifelong effects. For instance, days, weeks, months after the bomb was dropped, and sometimes in people who seemed unaffected by the bomb, to have no marks on their bodies, they would suddenly find themselves having weird symptoms, very grotesque symptoms, bleeding from all of their bodily openings, bleeding into the skin, severe diarrhea, bloody diarrhea, extreme weakness, high fever, and when white blood counts could be taken, very high white blood counts, extreme weakness, and in many cases death. If people lived a little longer, other grotesque symptoms would follow, such as their hair falling out. Now, these were the symptoms of acute radiation effects. Nobody understood this at the time. They simply sensed that there was some kind of poison in the bomb. And the people in Hiroshima began to feel that this is a weapon that leaves behind poison in your bones.